thanks for coming here to our event, Protecting the Rights of Migrants. Here at the Monterey Institute, we believe that it's really important to talk about immigration laws, and especially considering the current development of events with U.S. Latin American immigration over the summer. This is a pressing issue. So in order to organize this, 3 clubs on campus collaborated. That is Conflict Resolution Association, Amnesty International Club, and Global Majority. And we all put it together for you to enjoy, hopefully. Audrey, my colleague, is going to pass the question part. So if you have any questions, please write it down. We'll collect it during the break. There is going to be a break, but a short one. And Audrey is also passing the Conflict Resolution Association cards if you want to join us, if you like the event or want to check the recordings or pictures. They're going to be posted on Facebook and the website. And I'm presenting to you Professor Tsuneo Akaha, who is going to be the moderator for today's panel. And leaving it up to you.
Thank you very much. To start off, I want to thank the organizing or co-hosting organizations here on campus for this opportunity, which I think is very promising because we have a panel of real substantive heavyweights, figuratively speaking. Well, I don't know. As I was just introduced, my name is Tsuneo Akaha. I have been here at the Monterey Institute since 1989. Among other classes, I teach classes focused on international migration. So it's my pleasure and professional honor to be able to join my colleagues, newly acquired colleagues and friends, maybe on Facebook too, because we share quite a bit of commonality in terms of our interests, concerns, and value orientations. This is how we'd like to conduct the program today. I will give a little bit of background information to place this panel in some kind of a perspective or context, sharing some background information, and then introduce very briefly the 3 presenters. And the 3 presenters will each take about 5 minutes, but I'll be flexible. My students know how flexible I am, so I'm going to be rather flexible with time. So please feel free to extend your remarks if you need to. And then we will have a panel discussion where I would moderate in terms of themes or issues that they will have raised during their opening remarks. And I might add some additional issues for us to discuss. And then we'll take a break, during which time you are to submit to us your written questions, which I will go through quickly and put them in some kind of order, and then address those questions to the panelists. So no questions for me, please address the panelists. Then we will engage all of you in our 2-way conversation about issues and challenges and opportunities that migration represents in this country, and most particularly here in California. So how many people here know what proportion of the world's total population is represented by migrants? And a migrant defined as someone who is resident in a country other than his or her place of birth or country of birth. 1%, 10%, 20%, take a guess.
I'd say 5 to 10%.
You're close on the lower end.
60%.
Migrants?
Yes.
That's how I would like to define migrants, but according to IOM, the International Organization for Migration, because we need to standardize at least one functional definition of migration, a migrant is someone, as I said, who lives or is resident in a country other than his country of birth for at least 1 year. Okay? And that is represented by 3% of the world's population. Now that doesn't sound like a huge number, but if we were to establish a United States of migrants, bringing together all the migrants around the world into one country, that country will be the 5th largest in the world. So that's how many of us migrants there are in this world. And of course, you know, the United States has historically defined itself as a country of immigration, and the United States continues to be the country that is home to the largest number of immigrants in the world. As of 2013, we had 37,547,789 persons born in countries outside of the United States who are resident in the United States. And they represented 14.3% of the entire population of people living inside the United States. That's a significant number. And that proportion is growing faster than the proportion of native-born Americans. In addition, we have, and overlapping with that population also, we have what is known as irregular migration, or undocumented migrants. Sometimes people refer to these people as illegals, or illegal aliens. But I don't like that terminology because it characterizes the whole personality of the individual as illegal. It's the action, possibly, that a person has engaged himself or herself in that may have been illegal in one sense or another. But the whole personality should not be defined as illegal. At least that's how I address these kinds of issues. But at least irregular migrants in the United States numbered an estimated 10 to 13 million as of last year. So that's a significant number. Migrants coming to the United States as well as to other countries for a variety of reasons. Some people are seeking employment opportunities, educational opportunities, family reunification to rejoin their family members. Some people are refugees fleeing political persecution or famine or natural disasters, conflicts, war, revolutions, and other kinds of reasons. Increasingly, we're talking about environmental refugees, people who escape environmental disasters. There are a couple of countries in the South Pacific and the Indian Ocean that may disappear totally. And the big question is, where do they go? What happens to their countries? So, some of these people are likely to come to the United States as environmental refugees, although the term environmental refugee is not a legally established term, not yet anyway. Also, there are people who come into the United States or other countries not out of personal wishes. We're talking about victims of human trafficking, of which the President Obama has something to say, and I will quote him in a minute. And then we have people who voluntarily ask to be smuggled across national borders because they find it impossible or very expensive to move across national borders, quote unquote, legally. So they ask agents, sometimes elements of criminal organizations, to help them smuggle themselves across national borders. And we have a large number of these people in this country as well, although we don't have very good numbers, statistics, because after all, these are illegal crossings of national borders. Among the prominent immigrants in the United States, we have Secretary of Commerce Gary Locke, who is a Chinese American. We have Secretary of Labor Hilda Solis, whose parents are from Nicaragua and Mexico. We have 8 members of Congress right now who were born overseas. You don't need to be born in the United States to become a congressman, right? Unlike for president. They were born in Cuba, Japan, the Netherlands, Mexico, Taiwan, and Vietnam. And of course, President Barack Obama, his father was a Kenyan, an immigrant, so the president is the son of an immigrant, but he was born in the United States, right? We're 100% sure of that, right? Good. And in the United States, we've had different kinds of responses to the presence of migrants as individual people and to the phenomenon, social phenomenon called migration. Some people say, I'm all in favor of migration, but I just don't like these migrants, or vice versa. So there is a distinction between migration as a social phenomenon and migrants as individual citizens. And there's a mixture of responses, right, ranging from people who say, oh, let's embrace all of them, including those who may have entered this country illegally, on the one hand. And on the other hand, there are those who say, let's kick them all out, send them back to where they came from. I think the vast majority of Americans will be somewhere in between. So maybe there are some qualifications to allowing or permitting or encouraging people to stay on to become productive members of our society. And then there are others who attach such strict qualifications that virtually everybody who tries to meet those requirements may be categorized as not meeting those requirements, all of those requirements. So they may be under very difficult situations. Why is immigration or migration a significant phenomenon? Why should we care? Okay, and I will quote the most authoritative person in the United States to address that issue, and that's President Obama. He says, and I quote, "It is this constant flow of immigrants that help make America what it is. To this day, America reaps incredible economic rewards because we remain a magnet for the best and the brightest for people around the world. In an increasingly interconnected world, being an American is not a matter of blood or birth. It is a matter of faith. E pluribus unum, out of many, one. That is what has drawn the persecuted and impoverished to our shores. That's what led the innovators and risk-takers from around the world to take a chance here in the land of opportunity. That's what has led people to endure untold hardships to reach this place called America." That's a quote from his address on immigration issues at American University on July 1st, 2010. I mentioned victims of human trafficking, of whom we have quite a few in this country. And not just in this country in general, but in our backyard, in our vicinity, in our community, there are victims of human trafficking. Most people in the public may not be aware of it, but there are some. And occasionally we hear police stories, newspaper reports about arrests of traffickers, and also arrests or protection of victims of human trafficking, just in our backyard. President Obama, I like him so that I keep quoting him. He says, "It ought to concern every person because it is a debasement of our common humanity. It ought to concern every community because it tears at our social fabric. It ought to concern every business because it distorts markets. It ought to concern every nation because it endangers public health and fuels violence and organized crime." I'm talking about the injustice, the outrage of human trafficking, which must be called by its true name, modern slavery. So here we are gathered today to talk about the protection of the rights of migrants in this country in general, but more specifically in California or in our neighborhood. So what rights do they have to start with? We have domestic law, domestic legislation that provides for the protection of citizens. Do we have a separate set of laws for the protection of non-citizens? Well, to the extent that the United States is part of the global community, one measure of how committed we are as the United States to the protection of the rights of migrants is what conventions, global conventions, universally established legal frameworks and principles and rules the United States is binding itself by. So that's one question. On the positive side, we have the United States that has ratified the 1967 Protocol to the Refugee Convention. We have ratified in 2005, we ratified the Transnational Organized Crime Convention. In the same year, we also ratified the protocol against trafficking in persons, as well as the protocol against smuggling of migrants. On the other hand, the United States has not yet ratified the Migrant Workers Convention, which provides for the rights of migrant workers, migrants in general, and their family members. The United States has not ratified that convention, nor has the United States ratified or even signed the two ILO conventions that have to do with the protection of the rights to work, or rights of workers. Okay, and many migrants are workers, as well as consumers and contributors to national economic vitality and development. Okay, so this is the context and background information that we need to keep in mind as we address ourselves to the issue of how to protect migrants and their rights. There are some universal human rights to which we're all entitled, regardless of our background, both migrants and non-migrants. There are specific international conventions that protect the rights, provide for the rights of specific categories of people, such as migrants, such as refugees, such as victims of human trafficking, or people who are smuggled, and such as the child, who has his or her own set of rights that are separated and distinctly provided for in the Convention on the Rights of the Child. So we have universal legal provisions for all of us, and then there are specific rights that pertain to migrants. So we have two layers of international treaties and international conventions that are designed to protect the rights of migrants. But to what extent is the United States protecting, actually implementing all of those legal principles? And the discussion this afternoon will probably show some cases or historical accounts in which violation of basic human rights has actually occurred, and what we can do about it, and what we need to do in the future, both in the United States as a whole and in our local community. Okay, so I'd like to briefly introduce to you the three panelists. Claudia, who is sitting over there in a beautiful red scarf. Claudia, excuse me, Melendez Salinas. She's a multimedia journalist, currently working with the Monterey County Herald. She covers migration issues, among other issues. She's reported about the Latino community for 15 years in Mexico and the United States. Her work has appeared in Mexico City's La Jornada, did I pronounce it okay? El Financiero, Latina, and El Andar magazine. She's won several awards, including the Ruben Salazar Award for the California Chicano newspaper. Some of you may be familiar with that publication. She's a recipient of the 2005 Justice in Journalism Fellowship and a 2008-2009 Annenberg Fellow of the Annenberg School of Communication at the University of Southern California, which happens to be my alma mater. Congratulations. Claudia earned her master's in specialized journalism at the University of Southern California, where she concentrated in demographic change in the United States. And as I said, she's currently a staff writer for the Monterey County Herald. Her presentation will be followed by Patricia, who is sitting right next to me, who is half Japanese. Can you tell? I can tell. Patricia Adura-Miranda is a graduate of Yale Law School. Patricia has an impressive resume, both in and out of the law. She was a finalist for the White House Fellowship Program under the Obama administration and was a top 10 Latina of the year. So the other half is Latina. Can you tell? I don't know which half. maybe the better half.
My dancing hat.
Or wrestling half. She told me that she used to wrestle too, so I better watch out. So that Latina of the Year was for the Latina magazine in 2004. Patricia earned both her master's degree in international policy studies and her BA in economics from Stanford University up the coast. I heard about that school. Where she graduated Phi Beta Kappa. Her recent experience includes working as an attorney partner at Miranda, Magden, and Miranda, LLP, and Immigration Legal Services Law Clerk at Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County, where she assisted eligible immigrants and asylees in navigating the challenging process of becoming a U.S. citizen. And she's been an advocate on behalf of individuals to improve their immigration status and assess their rights as immigrants, refugees, asylees, and guardians. Additionally, Patricia was employed by Global Crossroads in Sri Lanka as a tsunami relief worker. So she's the kind of person that we are graduating here at the Monterey Institute. So they're following your footsteps. So they catch up with you quickly. And she will be followed by Mr. Juan Martinez. He's a veteran of Latino interests in California and a local Monterey County community member. He has spent his adult life fighting for the rights of Latinos in labor, education, and civil respect. He's a champion for the disadvantaged in the Monterey County area. He has served on the Hartnell College Board of Trustees between 1979 and 1991. He's been working to expand the school into King City. Are you still working on that, or is that in your past?
If you've been down to King City, you'll see a new campus, King City campus. We have the East Campus in Salinas, which is Science, Ag, and Technology, which is our Ag Center, since this is the Ag Center of our world.
Yep.
And now we have an center there to do that. But, yeah, that's all done, so.
Congratulations.
I decided to retire off the board while it was still in good standing.
He remains a persistent activist to this day, fighting not only for those without voice or power, but also working to restore our community through renovation and protection. So we will proceed with the panel presentations in that order. Claudia?
Okay. Well, good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here. I would like to, before I start talking about, I'll start with a little story about the rights of migrants. And how many of you were here during the summer, earlier this year, and heard about a scandal in King City about police officers towing cars? Okay, so this is a very quick story, and I'll expound on it later. Earlier this year, it was discovered that a group of King City police officers were involved in towing and stopping undocumented immigrants, knowing that they are vulnerable because they don't have a driver's license. They can take their cars, so they stopped them, took their cars away, and then sold them for profit. And this is the kinds of stories that, and it's more complicated than that, but right now I'll tell you briefly that. This is the kinds of problems that happen when immigrants don't have access to legal documentation. When Dr. Hakuta talks about why migrants come, there's mostly two reasons: the push factor and the pull factor, right? The push factor is when there's famine and people have to leave, and economic factors. But there's also pull factors. Monterey County is a huge pull factor. Monterey County is the 4th largest agricultural producer in the in California. California being the largest agricultural producer in the United States. The agricultural economy in Monterey County is $4.4 billion. It is the largest source of revenue for the county. Hospitality being the 2nd largest source of revenue. Between agriculture and hospitality,
there is 50% of people in the county work on those areas. Our top crops here in Monterey County are strawberries and lettuce. And those two provide a great chunk of the income in California. If you drive around Watsonville or here at the farms, who are the people you see picking our crops? It is estimated at a national level that 7 out of 10 workers who work in the fields are foreign born. So people who pick our crops, people who feed our nation, are foreign born. There's many studies and lots of anecdotal evidence that people who are born in this country, they, for the most part, do not like working in the fields. It's a very tough job, especially doing the hardest jobs, which is harvesting. It is the hardest thing to be strawberries. Strawberries is our largest crop. Have you guys seen how strawberries are harvested? By hand. You have to be pretty much bent on your back all day. And those people, they call them unskilled labor. My God, these people, these workers are so fast. You go around and they just go picking, and because when they pick and they fill the little boxes that the ones that you open up in Safeway. The workers are in the field with their boxes, just picking the strawberries and immediately distributing them, and they're just so skilled. They know exactly what size, where it goes. Doesn't it look beautiful when you come out of it? That's the workers that are doing this, and they have to do these. And I don't have off the top of my head how many strawberries they pick, like a minute or a day, but they're not getting paid by the hour, they get paid by the rate. So if the rate of production is not high enough, it's not worth it for them to be doing this. So, and some farms they get an hourly rate and plus, but for the most part it's just piecemeal work. 94% of the field workers are of Mexican origin. So most of the people who work in the fields are of Mexican origin. Mexico, there's this huge symbiotic relationship between Mexico and the United States when it comes to these, well, no, it's just that, but with a lot of other things. The drug trade, for instance. But Mexicans come here because they're pulled by this availability of labor. A lot of the immigrants come from very impoverished regions of Mexico. For the last 10 years in Monterey County has seen an influx, for the last 20 years, has seen an influx of people who come from indigenous regions, for instance, Oaxaca and South Mexico, Mayans. These were regions that in the past were not, the immigrants did not come with as high of numbers, but in more recently, because of changes in the economy and because of changes what's happening, more and more migrants have been coming to this area. And they all, for the most part, work in agriculture. Where if you go downtown to Greenfield, you will see them picking peas and celery. Celery is more to the north. So the whole county, when you go to the fields and you see somebody harvesting crops, there will be 99% certainty there will be migrants from Mexico. Oh, in Central America too, they also have been coming in the last few years. In fact, if you, it was mentioned that during the summer there was a crisis with the young kids coming from Central America. There's a small group of kids who came here, they're here living with their families, and there has not been a lot of publicity because people want to avoid the demonstrations that were held against them in the summer in Southern California, which were really mean. So that's kind of the thing that they're trying to avoid here. But migrants come to places where there's already a lot of roots for them and they have a lot of family connections. And so Mexico, and I know Juan will talk about this, Mexico, there was a treaty between Mexico and the United States in the 1940s, during Second World War, to bring migrant workers from Mexico to here. And these workers pretty much paved the path for the immigration that we have now, because they came here, they scoped it out, they decided this is a good place for us to come, and then they started bringing their relatives and telling their friends there's work available here. So that's how they started coming here. what happens when these workers for the most part here undocumented, and there's been a lot of efforts for the last, oh my God, 6-7 years. We have 10 to 13 million undocumented immigrants in the United States. In Monterey County, it's estimated that it's 63,000. What happens when you have 63,000 people who have here with no papers? And when you have no papers, it's really difficult to have your existence, because people are afraid. People are afraid that if they get caught, they're gonna get deported. And if they get deported, what's gonna happen to their kids? How are they gonna make a living? They came here to begin with because they couldn't make a living back in their home country. But there's other things that happen with that. For instance, they cannot get a driver's license, and that's something that just recently changed. California recently approved driver's license for undocumented immigrants. That law will be in effect in January. So that's something that is really going to help a lot of people. But when you have no means of securing an identity in the United States, and you don't have a driver's license, and you cannot drive a car legally, you are exposed to the type of abuses that happen in King City. So, this police officer brokered a deal with the tow truck company, and he said, for every 10 cars that you tow, you give me one, free. And the tow truck guy said, okay, well, let's do it this way. And so I was actually covering the testimony, the preliminary hearing. The police officer towed 23 cars on a weekend because there was one car in the law that he liked and he wanted that car. So he said, I'm gonna give you the cars, 23 cars in a weekend. So these cars get taken from the migrants, they get sold for 500, 1,000 or whatever, and then they never see their money again. So these are the type of abuses and it's one instance. There's lots of instances. Migrants get really abused in the workplace. There's a lot of very unscrupulous employers who don't pay them what they're supposed to be paid, et cetera, et cetera. The women get harassed in the fields. And every single time, they do not go to the authorities because they're afraid they're gonna be deported. And they don't want to. They don't want to leave their family, they don't want to leave their friends. They've already they're living here. One very stark statistic is that the majority of the migrants, there was a recent study that the 10 million people who live here undocumented, they have been an average of 10 years live here. So these are not people that just come through the night. These are people that have very strong roots in their community. They have, many of them have bought houses. They have houses and their children grew up here, their children are US citizens, and it's a very difficult situation for them. Besides the driver's license, there was a couple other laws that were enacted this year in California. There was also the Trust Act, which is, did you ever hear about the Secure Communities? The Secure Communities was a program enacted by the Obama administration that allowed police entities to deport or detain immigrants for just minor violations like, traffic stops or broken taillights, and deport them. And so that was one of the reasons the Obama administration has deported more immigrants than any other administration before him. Something that the Latino community does not like very much. So the Trust Act that was also enacted by California Governor Jerry Brown, that is going to stop that. So now the police agencies will be forbidden from doing that. So that's going to stop that practice right there. And then we have the driver's license, and we have also in-state tuition for DREAM students, the undocumented children who have lived in the States since they were since they were young, and they were accepted into the universities, but then many times they didn't have money to pay for the university. So now they will have in-state tuition, which is also a great help for them. So those are kind of the legislation that has been set in California to help immigrants out, but before that it was really difficult for them, and that's something that many hope is going to help. So, and I will leave it at that, and then I'll give the microphone to.
Thank you very much. Patricia, the floor is yours.
Hi, my name is Patricia. I'm very happy to be here today. My attorney brain wants to correct one thing in my bio. sorry. I was just a volunteer rebuilding in Sri Lanka. I wasn't actually employed there, so just a volunteer. But I am the proud daughter of immigrants from Brazil. Both my parents came over and started a new life, first in Canada and then the United States. And I very much see myself as the very happy ending of a fantastic story, which is their story. And I very much respect their ability to move to a completely new country and begin all again. I got to watch them, and they suffered a little bit with this fear of getting lost in the cracks, because they didn't have any family here. And extra kudos and thanks to my dad. My mother passed away when I was young, so it was him here with his kids. And they had papers, right? So it's a whole other level when you don't have papers. And the type of fear that my colleague here was expressing is to the nth degree. I was asked to speak a little bit in my area of expertise, so I'm going to have a leaning towards the legal and the law. But in our Q&A period, maybe I'll share my less informed position on comprehensive reform and all that other stuff. So the law is near and dear to my heart. I wanted to become an attorney when I was younger, largely because I saw the effects that the law can have rippling, protecting someone's right early on, a female that wants to wrestle. But with DOMA, with Brown v. Board, you start to see that the law oftentimes changes first, and then the stigma and the social discrimination, everything takes longer. But if we can push the legal button, the rest will follow. And my theme today, and I'll wrap it up at the end, is that your individual voice really matters when it comes to the law. Right? The law is made by elected officials, and they want to keep their jobs. And so your voice really does matter, and I'll tie that back in. Some of the things that I was going to talk about that California has done has already been mentioned, so it'll hurry my talk along. But my example that your voice matters is California, right? California, if you look at the protections that they've been busy doing while the federal level people can't seem to agree on anything, right, is a confidence booster that there are ways that we can act, even if the rest of the United States needs to get pulled along, once again, by California. So the Trust Act, the California Dream Act, financial aid has already been talked about. The driver's license privilege is a lot that we have decided to do to make life a little bit more livable while we wait for the federal level. I wanted to talk a little bit about AB 2. Well, I'll do the normal name, the Call for Kids Act and the Reunited Immigrant Families Act. These were passed a few years ago, but I think it's a real testament to the California conscious and the desire that we have to make life livable for all Californians. This has to do with something somebody might not think about too much, right? When there's a work raid or you got turned over by secure communities because you had a busted tail light and you get put in immigration detention, there's lots of mothers and fathers that have children here. And those children, while they're out working the 10 to 12-hour days in the fields, their children sometimes are with a daycare provider. And what happened a lot, and it's just crazy to put yourself in that position, is that you get taken by immigration, you're in detention, you're going to be turned over to ICE. Across the United States, not all states give the right for you to make child care provisions for your child. To place the minimum of 2 phone calls, because think about what you need to do. Call the child care provider, right, and call the uncle that's down the street to let them know that their nephew and niece are there and they need to get picked up, because you don't know if you're going to end up in Mexico by 2 a.m. tomorrow morning. So what happens is the terrible result that California acted on is that these children would end up in the foster care system, supported by the state or in foster care. And then with the laws, how they are about termination of parents' rights, these children lose their parents, in effect, legally. And California saw this happen, and how atrocious it is when there's uncles down the street that could have kept these children in the family. California instituted AB 2015, 2 phone calls that the police officers have to inform anyone that's being placed in detention or taken to ICE. The notice that they have a right to 2 phone calls or in multiple languages in all detention facilities in California. And then the Reunited Immigrant Families Act allow an increase in time for the mandatory termination of parental rights, and makes people do a diligent search in the detention centers and the deportation rules to make sure that we're not truly severing the family relationship because we didn't give somebody a phone call. So California is acting on things like that, and that makes me very proud to be a Californian. But I travel around when I talk to people anytime I can, and I travel with this little roll of contact phone numbers. And what I ask is, if even just 3 of you come and pick one of these up, these are your state representatives and all your federal representatives for you here in Monterey County. And these numbers, I swear, if you call them, there are people that are staffing that really are there to hear from you, right? You're their constituents, you're the ones that vote. And for you to say something like, I support the 2 phone calls, but I think we should be doing more on X. Or let's say, I wrote this one down, I would like to see us sign the International Migrant Workers Convention, right? That'll blow their socks off, but it's one more voice that says, hey, as a US Congressman, I represent the 20th District, and somebody in there cares, right? Somebody in there cares, so now they have a little bit more impetus to act. So if you guys can pick this up, I ask that you just put it in your cell phones, because that's the only way that people actually do this. Just pick and write, state senator, and then put a phone number in. And anytime the issue comes up, just call, and someone's going to say, Senator Boxer's, line, what can I do for you? And you can just give your opinion.
I just had a quick comment, because I was in DC last summer, and they have to count every time someone calls the office. They have to count your phone call, and they have to say what it was about. So it actually really is important.
Yeah, and if we look at the stats, and the reason why I started doing this is because it was reported to me that although a majority of Americans, almost 7 out of 10, support some sort of comprehensive reform that helps bring people out of the shadows, the calls that congressmen are getting, right, the House, which is the people that are holding this up, is 10 to 1 saying we don't want these illegals here. The people that are calling, right, hate and fear do that, it gets over the burden of us picking up the phone. But if they're outnumbering us call 10 to 1, even though a majority of us support it, then we need to start calling more. Anyway, so that's sort of why I started doing that. Okay. So, because I have the the legal bent, if anyone wants to talk about changes in the laws that can be done, that's outside of what California can actually do, right? Because there is a limit to our reach. We can't give somebody work authorization. That's exclusively federal. We can't tell someone that they can actually be here, right? That's immigration, it's federal law. So there are low-hanging fixes to federal law that would make a lot of sense for everyone. And so I'd be happy to talk about that. The lowest hanging fruit for me is something called the permanent bar. Has anyone heard about that? It's a bar to being able to apply for legal status. And it literally, one way you can trigger what's called the permanent bar, it's not permanent, it just means for 10 years you have to wait outside the country in order to try and apply for a visa, which is forever, right, if you're here and have a family. But you can trigger a permanent bar simply by being in the United States for a year without documentation, and then going home to visit a sick grandma, and then coming back without permission. That act trips a bar when you step outside the United States, and then when you come back in, you're now permanently barred. Even if you marry a U.S. citizen and try and do waivers, it won't work. So a lot of the hate speech that we hear about, why don't all these people just get in line, right? The ones that did that, visited a sick grandma, there's no line they can be in, right, without them being willing to leave here for 10 years and being away from their family. And that, the whole institution of the permanent bar started in the late 90s, right? We can survive without it. A lot of people might have a legal way to adjust without it. So there's lots of little things like that that are real no-brainers, especially on the employment-based immigration side that I'm sure you've heard of. So that's just throw out. I'd be happy to talk about it. I don't want to be too boring right now if you guys don't want to talk about it. But my passion when I'm talking about the law and immigration is to try and stamp out the contradictions that we have. And it was already mentioned, this pull effect, right? We have posters that immigrants have brought in and put up in Jalisco saying, come work in our fields in Oregon, and then they get here and all of a sudden they're criminals, right? And so our laws, the contradiction of our laws and what we actually need in this country is something that self-honesty would be nice in our system, and our legal system is a great way to take a step in that direction. So again, the call to action is please, if you will put this in your cell phone, these are already tailored to you. So if you're a Monterey County resident, these are all of your representatives. And if you want to get extra golden star, because California is already a leader in this area, we could do more. But if you have family, sisters, brothers, cousins that live in, say, Colorado, or other less progressive states, if you want your ideas to be spread around, you can go on the AILA, it's the American Immigration Lawyers Association. It's just the tool that I know. But it's just AILA.org, and you can actually look up, using somebody's zip code, all of their representatives. So a large part of the, what makes it hard for people is you tell your cousin, hey, you agree, let your representative know because he's not voting this way. They're like, oh yeah, I'll look up his number, and then they never do. So you can do it for them on AILA.org and just send it to them, email it, say, hey, it's right here in case you feel like doing it. That's my call to action. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we turn to Juan to share his expertise and experience with us.
Thank you. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Juan Martinez, soy from Salinas, California. How can I say this? Speak it Spanish? Sprechen Sie Spanish? That's bilingual, German and Spanish, right? So that's, we have a little trilingual here with the English part. So, and I usually do that to try to, especially in an immigration type conference, right? It's important that we acknowledge all our different backgrounds. So, personally, I'm honored to be here, and I have a lot of experience in Monterey County and mostly in Salinas Valley. I developed my organizing skills and stuff the hard way. I go out and do it. I didn't spend a whole lot of time in the classroom. I wish I had. I'm spending more time in the classroom talking to people like you guys now that I'm older than I was when I was, I didn't want to go to school then. Now I look forward to talking, right? One of the reasons is because my language was so messed up. I didn't speak my native language. I spoke Spanish and I spoke English. So those are the languages I was taught. My native language is American Indian. We're here from Monterey County, and so that was ripped off from us a long time ago. Right up the hill, we have a place where you have the what's it called, the Presidio? You coming out of the tunnel, you got the hill on that shoulder there. Well, that whole shoulder there used to be a campsite for our folks and move around depending on the weather and stuff. So anyway, that's where we go back a ways. My dad, well, I started with my grandma. She was born in 1882. My dad's mom, 1822. My dad was born in 1905. My mom was born in 1916. Now, I tell you those dates because they're significant in that tells you, as a parent, the parent teaches the child, right? So what do they teach? They teach what they know, they teach their love, they teach their caring, right? So what did they know back in 1905 and 1916, right? So they knew what they knew, and they taught me, and I was born in 1952. So, your guys' great-grandparents were born in 1905, something like that. So my dad was born in 1905, so I actually have that relationship going back that jumps back generation to generation, so we can actually talk about You know, my grandmother would tell my dad about how her mom was born in it wasn't Chular, California at the time, but that's the way she used to say to my dad, Chular, California de Mexico, Mexico Viejo, when all this is part of old Mexico. So that's the kind of discussions that were going around our house, and we were hunters, fishermen, go out and fish it, gut it, clean it up, barbecue it, have a good time, right? Now you guys go to a store and you buy your milk, buy your eggs, and you guys don't even know stuff, right? I mean, some stuff. You're all in school trying to learn these things. Okay, and I find it difficult for myself to make presentations sometimes because, you know, I see everybody around me has notes and I'm over here talking off the top of my head. But I usually bring props. That usually helps, and it brings an image to you folks. And I found that for myself, being a native, that it's much more, it sticks. It sticks, and that's important, right? Because I've been looking around, I haven't seen too many people taking notes. So I know you guys are going to remember my presentation. I'm going to get up and I'm going to give you a quick example of what we have here, and I'm going to try to keep it to those 5 minutes, okay? Just fly through it real quick. Thank you. Now, Claudia has seen me do this before. At a number of presentations I've done in different communities or different events in the community, in Salinas primarily. But I usually like to give an example. When we talk about the hardship of people, it's not just about the law coming down on you and trying to control your every move, but it really is about how day-to-day suffering. And everybody suffers at one level or another. I mean, the rich, the poor, you know, the female, the male, the young, you know, everybody. So it's how we look at it. Now, let me give you some ideas of some of the stuff that most people might take for granted, they didn't even know what it is. This would be like a slave grade, what do you call those? Somebody, yeah, well, okay. You see that? What it is, you hang a sack through here, like a potato sack, or onions. This is what it was for. So you put it here, and it's empty, and it holds up the opening, opens up, right? So you're bent over, and you're picking up the vegetables, or the tomatoes, or not the tomatoes, but the potatoes or the onions, and you're putting it into the sack. So that sack starts to get heavy, right? So you're like a mule. You're like an ox that's pulling this weight. It's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. They did it with cotton. They did it with this and a number of other things. So they have these people working like slaves, working like animals. So when we talk about suffering, you know, you have to really kind of see this stuff to understand what we're talking about. And in those days, there wasn't laws that limit the length of the field, of the roll. You could take a roll, as long as you own the property, you just cut it straight, and the people have to be bent over to get to the other end, right? There was laws created to stop that, to say, no, you can't go over so far, because people have to get up and, you know, go to the restroom, have some water, something, because they're being treated like slaves, being treated like animals, you know? Okay, some of the tools of the trade. These two in particular, for lettuce, broccoli, of course, a knife and a sharpener, right? So this is the tools people would use, and every once in a while they get to the end of the what we call the surco, or the roll, and you get there, you shine it down a little bit and you move on, stick it in, and you're walking around with it. So these are actually pretty cool. These are original oldies. I mean, everything I have here is original stuff. Even the hat. There's some of the hats people would wear. Lunch pails. You guys remember the lunch pails, right? Come on. You guys all remember the square ones, though, right? The ones that for kids? Yeah. There's a little cartoon on there and all that. Well, this is the stuff that the grown-ups would use. So, and a thermos for the hot chocolate, coffee, menudo, stew, beans, whatever the gente would make at home. You would take this with you and you'd be there. Okay. You guys ever heard of the short handle hoe, el cortito? Yeah, el cortito, man, that was a nasty tool. This guy right here. Okay, why? Because it wasn't so much the handling of it, but dealing with it in the day's work. Because you're bent over all day long, and you got the patron just looking at you saying, "Hey, Juanito, hey, Juan, come on, let's go." So, two different sizes, right? Okay. Now, in the old days, when they were growing vegetables, and a tractor would come and make the furrows where they would plant the seed. And they put a little scar in the ground, and then the machine will come by right behind it, or be towed by it, by the tractor, and all these seeds would just fall in line, right along the thing, right? When you water it, and nurture it, and grow, now you have all these plants growing like this, right next to each other, right? Okay, what these tools do is prepare the vegetable or the crop for the harvest by allowing it to grow. How did they do that? Well, because, which one was it? This one. This one here, you see the width of that? Right? The width of that is the space between, let's say, a lettuce head, allowing it to grow. Because remember, when you plant it, when you drop the seeds, they all grew real close to each other. When I went like this, I actually meant that close together. Just one growing after the other. You gotta have space for that vegetable to grow. And this is what they did. So the trick was, you stay in that narrow furrow, and it's the leg that crosses this way, that crosses this way, that crosses this way, and this way. And every time you're doing that, you're hitting it this way. And you have to hit it just right. So skilled labor, you know, she talks about skilled labor. This is skill, when you can actually hit the darn thing and come that close to the other plant without knocking it down. Because you have to leave that plant, and so that your crops will grow and you have your crops in there. So now you have a large lettuce head. As you're growing your crop, you have to get rid of the weeds. See how narrow that is? The reason why it's so narrow is so that you can carve around the plant. Okay? So let's say this is a lettuce head, that's a lettuce head, and this guy here, that long, and just made a big old gash, right? So now you got these two crops growing there. Around here, because of the nurturing and the watering and all that, you're going to have growth of everything, because life finds a way. Every weed, if there's a place, it's going to grow. So what you need is a smaller implement that's going to actually work around it. And you're going around all the stuff. And all day long, this is when you're looking for the weeds, and you're trimming around it. So that's the nature of the cortito. And the cortito was a little tough tool. If you know, I mean, you're all young, so you probably worked maybe, what, a half hour doing it? Try 30 years. Right? So there were lawsuits created and stuff. They put a stop to it because a lot of people were ending up with bad backs, and they were just messed up by the time they were 30. They're 45, you know, and they had to look for the work. Most of the time, they end up at the hospital with bad backs or something. And guess who pays? We all pay. Taxpayers pay. Why? They're not getting paid enough money to have insurance. So where do they go? General hospital. And up to all over the country. General hospital. Rich, poor, you know, they go to general hospital and the taxpayer pays. So there's laws that were created. Same as the seatbelt. The seatbelt law wasn't because they don't want you to get hurt. It's because when you get hurt, who ends up at the hospital and who's got to pay for it? Everybody. So it's your accident, you should pay for it. Hey, you know, so this is what they did. They created a law that said everybody's got to have a seatbelt. Why? Because that way less people, when they get in an accident, will end up in the hospital with a busted nose, twisted ankles, or whatever it is. It saves everybody money. So laws are created, right? Okay, a little bit of history about me. Got out of high school, 1970, got a draft notice. That weekend, or that summer, I went to LA. We were at a anti-war. We actually went to a wedding. That was the reason why we went, actually. The wedding, family thing. We went down there, and as we were walking out of the church, and we're on Whittier, there were like 10,000 people walking in front of us, anti-war stuff. And for me, I hate to say it this way because it has negative connotation to it, but I'm like a killer. I kill things, right? I'm a hunter. So we hunt, we fish. I had no problem gutting it out and doing all that stuff. Some people think, oh man, you can never do that. We all eat hamburgers, fries, or we all kill something, even if it's an apple, right? An apple's alive at one point. Okay, so what happened, we walked out. All these people are walking through, and they're with the signs. My primos, my cousins, the husband and wife with tuxedo and the wedding gown, they walk out, they get in the march, and they start walking down Whittier Boulevard. So, vámonos, right? Let's go. So there we go, those that wanted to go. The older ones, you know, the kids, hey, let's go, man, this is cool. They stayed at the church and then went on to the reception. We went down to go see what all that was about, and we were told what it was about. Anti-war, because you see all Chale, no, I won't go. Chale, no, we don't go. You know, all this kind of stuff that was going on within the Latino community, anti-war stuff in the 70s. So we got to Laguna Park. So we go to Laguna Park, and everybody's having a good time. We're standing maybe about from here to across the street from a liquor store, and we saw the cops in there arresting some. Look at, you got a liquor store across the street, and on this side of the street, you have 10,000 people at the park. The store had 2 employees. They knew 10,000 people were going to be across the street. August 29th, 1970. They knew 10,000 people were going to be across the street. In LA, in August 29th, 1970. It's hot in LA, August 29th of any year. Here's a liquor store with 2 employees, 10,000 people across the street, right? Okay, so everybody's thirsty. We had this march. People go in there, get a soda, steal what they can. Why? Because there's only 2 people. Guy calls the cops. Cops show up. All right, up against the wall. Okay, get out. Next. Clearing the store out. One guy pushes him up against the wall, bottle drops. And I'm trying to talk fast. I get to my 5 minutes. Plus, it keeps me from stuttering so much. So I used to be a stutterer. It was bad. But anyway, so we're there, and we're in the park. But we saw the commotion going on, and we're saying, oh, trouble, somebody's getting arrested, someone's trying to steal something, obviously, right? Okay, Latino, liquor store, 10,000 people. You know, cops show up, and have this guy against the wall. The thing falls, right? And, how was it? Oh yeah, they grab the guy, they try to handcuff him and all that. All of his buddies go, nah, come on, let's go. They push the cop down on the side, on the floor, and throw the buddy out, and they run into the crowd. Well, the other guys outside, the cops outside, they're calling for reinforcements. All these guys are running in to the park. As they run into the park, they're running in that direction, right? So the cops are sitting around, they're waiting for reinforcements. Some of the reinforcements are showing up. Well, guess what happens? You got a couple of cars, so about 5 or 6 units show up. But then you have like 13, maybe 15 buses show up within 9 minutes of the event, 9 minutes of the accident, in riot gear. And in those days, they practiced for riots because of the anti-war movement. We had Whittier, we had all these burning down of Chicago, we had all this stuff in '68, we had all these things going on, right? So our country was militarized, our police departments were militarized. Even more so than what you see now, except now we have technology, which makes it even that much more deadlier, the technology. But anyway, they showed up, they tried to go after some people. People were throwing rocks back, and it got ugly, tear gas, and then the whole thing just went wild, and we took off, running. That was my first experience with an Anglo trying to beat me up. Why? I don't know. Because I'm brown? I don't think so. I think it's just because I was on the wrong side of the street. If I was on this side, maybe he'd think, hey, I'm okay, I'm not with those people. But what happened with me, I have cousins with blonde hair, blue eyes, and to me, I have no problem with whatever color people are, because I know we're all human beings and we all go through a lot of challenges individually. But I saw what was going on. They were beating on me just because I looked the way I look. Of course, back then I looked a lot different, you know. I have a mustache like this and a headband going back, and I thought I was cool. And so it jolted me quite a bit, you know, and it made me realize a lot of things that were going on at the time. And a little bit of, I missed one little part, has to do with this thing here. 1963, a big accident happens here. You see 20 braceros died. Actually, in 4 days later, it ended up being 32.
That's in Salinas.
That's in Salinas, Chula, California. Okay, a bus hit a train. 32 people died. Here's the part of here's the train and the bus in front of it piled up, whatever was left. Pieces of it all over. Over here, bodies are thrown all over. You'll see bags here, body bags where bodies are thrown. Here's the train wheel. Here's the Red Cross asking people for blood. A couple of days later, they had the rosary. That's what a rosary of 32 coffins looks like at the Palma High School gymnasium in Salinas. Palma High School, 32 coffins laid out on the gymnasium floor. Over 9,000 people attended. The rich, the poor, the growers, the farm workers, the documented, the undocumented. Everybody was there. It was all over the radio and TV. So it's quite a historical site. I was, at the time of the accident, in '63, I was 11 years old. So again, you're 11 years old, that stuff's gonna stick on you, right? So it stuck on me, going from, and I lived in Gonzales. So going from Gonzales to Salinas, as more of a grown-up now, I have my own car, going back and forth to college and that, I was going by there every day, you can see it, you know, it's always a memory. So anyway, let's see. What we did 50 years later, we asked the State Assembly to acknowledge what happened there and the contribution of farm workers and these particular braceros. And what ends up happening, we had a resolution, now we call it Bracero Memorial Highway. So for Chular to Gonzales, Bracero Memorial Highway. Take a note, Bracero Memorial Highway, Google it. You're gonna find a lot of stuff there. So what ends up happening, just for a little bit more information, we had this 50th anniversary and we produced this thing there. This one here has a list of 3 different accidents in Central California. 3 different accidents. You guys all, some of you might have heard of Woody Guthrie?
Yep.
Yeah? Okay. He sings a song about the plane that went down in Los Gatos Canyon. Not Los Gatos City, Los Gatos Canyon, which is over between King City and Colinga. It's right by the county line, a couple of miles from the county line, between Fresno County and Monterey County. If you're going to King City, just go up towards the hills, and you're there about 8 miles in, 9 miles in. And that's where the plane goes down. 28 people died. Oh, I'm sorry, 32 people died. 28 were braceros. There was a pilot, the co-pilot, the stewardess, and the INS agent. INS agent because they caught all these guys, and they didn't have braceras. Bracera is a female farm worker. They have braceros, which is a male. They only contracted the males. So, and by the way, the stewardess was pregnant. They found out later that the stewardess was pregnant. Actually, so there was 33 people that died. Okay, so what ends up happening, Woody Guthrie writes a song about it, right? So you got 28 braceros that died. 5 years later, 6 years later, we had another accident in Soledad. In Soledad, I jumped 5 years ago. A bus started on fire when the night before these guys were cleaning tools. Back in the old days, you get paint thinner or gas and you clean your tools. That's the way the guys used to do it because it used to dissolve all the grease and gunk off your tools. And you're working on tractors, you're working on stuff. At the end of the day, you even use it to get stuff off your hands, the gas and the paint thinner. So anyway, what ends up happening, the guy gets the container of gas, puts it in the bus, goes away. Next morning, everybody gets on the bus and they drive away. Well, the gas is sitting there, right? So the guys are bouncing around through town, right in the middle of town, on Palm Avenue. It's all that. They're bouncing through town, and these guys, young guys, smoking cigarettes. Well, the fumes are agitated, and they start floating around more, and boom, the whole thing blows up. Now, where did the guy put the gas? He was outside working on the tools, right? He got it and put it right nearest the door. So when the whole thing, when the gas thing flipped over, the gas just spilled all over the wooden floor, lit up, and now you had a wall of fire, and the heat was so intense. What do you do, right? You all been close to a fireplace, what that feels like. A bonfire or anything like that. You know what that feels like. Now imagine this whole thing all lit up. You know, gas spilled everywhere. People trying to get out. 14 died. 17 others critically injured. They had to kick the walls open of the vehicle to get out. So they got out. Critically injured. 14 died. 5 years after that event, this one happened. Now I'm adding all these up for you. When you figure it out, 28, 32, other 32, and then the 14. What is it, 74? Well, you guys take your notes, right? Okay. Now, geographically, when you look at the area where these accidents happened, and the time from the beginning of the Bracero program to the end of the Bracero program, 22 years. In my generation, what we looked at, what I compare with, is the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War lasted 22 years. From the time of the the first killing, to when we got out in 74, 75, okay, when they got out of Saigon. Okay, so during those same years, the total of the same years, 22, and then you look at the number of people in Monterey County that died in Vietnam, soldiers that died in Vietnam, it was 79. 79 soldiers died in 22 years in Vietnam, in Monterey County, geographically Monterey County. Okay, now, yes, it's right across the border from Monterey County, Fresno County, because I told you it's right on the other side of the border of Fresno County, but there's a smaller area. In that smaller area, you had 74 braceros died going to work. Going to work. 74 died. Going to war, 79 died. And we got a war. So this is the kind of mentality that, you know, if you start to look at these things, you say, my God, I never thought of it that way. And you start to think about it. Why? Falta de respeto. Lack of respect for the person who works the hardest. The person who always works the hardest is the one, sometimes, most of the time, sadly, ends up getting less respect. I don't know why it happens, but that's just our human nature. It happens to all races, it happens to all ethnicities or economic classes. The harder you work, the less people are going to respect you. Not the physical work. I'm not talking about some people sitting there doing the computer thing nowadays and all that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, you know, building a fence, digging a hole, planting a tree. Why? Because all of us are thinking, oh, I'll just hire Jose. He'll come for $5, he'll dig a hole, he'll plant the tree, and he'll water it for me. Oh, I'll just get Maria to come and do my laundry. I'll get Lupita I'll call Lupita and I'll go pick up dinner. This is what our society's coming to be. We have classes. And now economically you see it more now because the middle class, you either went up or you went down. And you're struggling all the way. So you guys are all products of what you saw happen from high school to now. You all saw what happened, and it's not good. So we're here to try to enlighten you about those realities. I got a few posters here from a magazine called My Criado that the United Farm Workers used to produce. And a friend of mine named Andy Tsuneo was an artist, and he's born in Salinas, grew up in Pearl Street in what we call the barrio, right there in Hebron Heights. 8 brothers and sisters. He's an engineer, worked with NASA. His brother's superintendent of high school in Gilroy, and blah, blah, blah. I go down the list, but we're not talking about them. But their whole, that woman, and the parents of those kids, focused on their education because that's where the power is at. It's about being sitting here. That's like, I feel sorry I didn't stay enough in my classes. So I come and hang out with you guys now. Hopefully it rubs off, but I want to learn more. And I'm learning all the time. The more I pick up books and find out about our past, the more it comes together. So when I ask you to take notes, it's just that you can compare stuff. You know, otherwise you're just logging in hours. Hey, I did my time, I'm going to get credit. Almost, you know, tomorrow's another day. But this history is part of what makes America what it is today. Okay? So when I tell people, so, hey, Juan, what are you? You know, you got light colored eyes. Eres Mexicano, eres Portugués. What is it? You know? And I said, I'm American. Oh, American, huh? Yeah. And I would look at someone like her and I said, well, I'm not like you. So why? I'm American. She was born wherever, right? I'm not like her. Blue eyes, blonde hair. You guys are European. I look at it that way because of my native blood. So I say, people who look a certain way, well, you guys are all from Europe. Oh, you guys are all from Asia. Oh, you guys are all from Africa. Because it's just real simple, right? For me, being a simple-minded person. But when you look at Native Americans, we are the Americans. Okay, so when we started a cultural center just to show people the other side of the coin, but phrase, right? The other side of the story. We started a cultural center, we call it Aguila Cultural Center, to be able to do just that. So we put all these flags out in front of the building. Every pole we could find, we put a flag out there, right? And we put all these American flags all over the place. And if you're standing in the front door, Steinbeck Center, half a block this way, Steinbeck House, a block and a half that way. Every tourist from Japan, Korea, King City, wherever they were coming from, would walk from the Steinbeck Center over to the Steinbeck house. And we're right there in the middle. They have to come right past us, right? We're on the same side of the street. They come right past us. And they saw the flags. So they, oh, this must be the Steinbeck Center. So they walk in and they see all of our stuff. And we actually did a historical center that goes from pre-Columbian all the way till today. Just talk about the struggle of civil rights, voting rights, all this stuff. So that's what we did. But those American flags that were out there, when people were looking at them, saying, oh, so, and then the Mexicanos that would come by, the Mexicanos, they were looking at it like that was an American flag. Because this happened 4 years ago. The Mexicanos were looking at it, oh, a sports bar, the World Cup, let's go, man, you know, have a beer and watch the game. And watch the soccer, because it was the same time of the World Cup. You see flags all over, and you kind of say, okay, if you're a Latino or other than, you know, if you understand football to be other than the American style, you'll always see flags, because it's a world event, okay? So, they walked in, and I said, no, those are all American flags. And people say, no, that's the American flag. And I said, no, that's not the American flag. And I'm talking about Old Glory, Star Spangled Banner and stuff, right? I said, that's not the American flag. That's the U.S. flag. These are American flags. Brazil, Mexico, Chile, Argentina, Canada. These are American flags. So all the way from El Norte to El Sur, we put up the American flags, and wherever we can find them. We put them up because we wanted to show people that we are Americans. We're not undocumented. We're not illegal. You know? Come on, let's get a little humanistic about it. So I'm glad you guys are here to listen to our presentations, and I think I've extended my 5 minutes, but we'll have some more conversation on this.
Okay, I don't know how to manage time. That's obvious. So instead of me raising questions for the three speakers, I'd like to immediately engage the audience with some questions. And then while we're doing that, we can still collect our food and other goodies. Do we have questions? Down? Thank you. Thank you.
While you're looking at this today, I'm going to tell one a story you'll like, and maybe the rest of you will like it too. You know Fred Harris, right?
Yes.
He was a U.S. Senator from Oklahoma, and he ran for president, actually. And one time he was on the campaign trail, and he loved when he got through his music, and so he had a band playing, you know, this land is your land, this land is my land. And he said he looked into the back of the crowd, and there was a whole group of Native Americans there. And he said, oh my God, this land is their land.
Very good. I spent my first year ever in the United States in Oklahoma, where Cherokees and other tribes people continue to live. And one thing I learned fairly recently is that they didn't know their history. The typical American textbook did not cover Native Americans' history. So Native Americans didn't grow up learning something about their ancestry. And by policy, children were taken away from the parents so that their culture will be discontinued. But I just wanted to put in a footnote. I've got three really excellent questions. Two of them happen to be the same questions that I was going to raise. So I'm managing my time quite well. And I'm glad that some students are taking notes. The first question is, what is being done about the abusive employers who knowingly hire undocumented workers, exploit them, and kill their backs, and operate not just a local business, but a US-wide business, moving hundreds of thousands of people from this place to another place to another place, following crops. And we as consumers don't see their faces. We don't even know who they are. But these are the CEOs and the presidents of massive companies that hire these people from around the world who come to this part of the country. So what is being done in terms of penalties for employers who knowingly hire undocumented workers? Anybody?
Well, workers, employers have been very skillful at not saying they knowingly hire because, so, when you don't have documents and you need to work, you're gonna try to do whatever it takes for you to be able to work. So the black market for documents was just flourished. People could get, this is kind of a joke, but people could go to the Mexican shopping centers and you would walk down the line and people would come to you and go, "Mi cas carteras, mi carteras." People would whisper to you that they would sell you fake papers. And if you go show those papers to an employer, they will go, "Oh, okay, yeah, sure." And then they play dumb. I mean, they know it. They know half of the people, or most of the people they hire are undocumented, but they will play dumb because they need the work. As long as these people say that they didn't know, because they're not knowingly employing them. But in the last few years, because of public pressure, there were a lot of raids. Those started with the Bush administration. There was a very large immigration site raid in Iowa in 2008. It was like 500 people were pretty much on site deported. I mean, processed, and most of them were deported. People in general when they're undocumented, they just don't really have a lot of recourse because they're afraid. A lot of them do go, there's an organization called California Rural Legal Assistance, and my colleague probably knows more about that one because it's a legal organization that takes cases, but in general, people are just very afraid to say, and it takes a person to say, "I've been abused," for them to build a case against their employers, so.
Okay, this next question is probably for Patricia. What progress has been made for the youth who are legal, maybe they were born in the United States, but whose parents may have come into the country illegally, or who may have overstayed their visas or whatever, and are currently in an illegal status?
So this is, it's actually coming to the heart of one of the more controversial things that you might see happening or not happening following the November elections. There's some rumblings that the executive order that Obama has been talking about might actually be going to the heart of the parents that have U.S. citizen children here that have been here for a very long time, who are hard workers, pay their taxes, but they don't have status. So this will be very dated, maybe hopefully in December, if there's some sort of action taken in that direction. But to understand the plight of the undocumented that have U.S. citizen children, you have to go back to the late 90s when there was this very dramatic shift in our immigration penalties and options for families. And the way you get a pardon or a waiver for a lot of, even some crimes, not for the permanent bar, but some crimes, is to show that you're leaving, or you not being able to come back for 10 years is going to cause extreme hardship to a U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident spouse or parent. But in these reforms that happened not too long ago, harm to your child, U.S. citizen child, was no longer a way that people could get a pardon for past wrongs, immigration wrongs, or minor crimes, and so forth. So that's what's really left, this huge mass of people that have U.S. citizen children, but the parents don't really have a way, Even if they wanted to leave and come in through the consulate in their country, they can't ask for forgiveness by showing that my child's life will be devastated. And that's one reason that I get so angry when I hear the whole anchor baby phenomenon that comes up during elections. That there is no anchor baby phenomenon, right? That was killed a long time ago, yet certain politicians want to scare people into thinking that it's there or that those people don't deserve some sort of relief. So there hasn't been the short answer is there hasn't been a lot of progress for those parents recently, because there's no way for them to actually get any credit for the fact that they've been supporting a U.S. citizen child and raising them, and they're being productive members of society themselves. But that is one of those low-hanging fruits of federal reform, that even if there's no executive order, and that's controversial, if you don't have the House and Congress behind you, how much will that really stick? But even if there's no executive order, right, allowing children to actually be a basis to get a pardon or a waiver, right, would open the door up to a lot of those parents. And that's one flick of the pen, right? It's, prove extreme hardship to, spouses, parents, or children. That it doesn't dramatically change everything, but it would very much change the lives of those parents that have U.S. citizen children.
So we need to pick up the phone, right? Call our senators and congressmen, put pressure on them. The next question probably is for Juan. There's an MA student who is training to become a teacher of English to speakers of other languages. It's called a TESOL program, teaching English to speakers of other languages. And my assumption is that in this country, if you don't know English, if you don't have sufficient level of English skills, you're handicapping yourself, generally speaking, other things being equal. So there are some students who are in local high schools who are being tutored or taught by some of our students who are becoming English teachers. But there are a whole host of other people, students, in grade school, in elementary, in high schools, who don't know that these classes are available. So the question is, how do we let them know that these opportunities are available, and we're willing to help them learn, develop their English language skills?
Wow, that's a good question. So we're not talking about the need to develop it or anything, it's already there, it's just how do you inform the community? Talk shows on the radio, people like Claudia, yourself starting a organization of students that volunteer to do that, and then have her come and do your story so that the world knows. There's tools out there that we can all use, and like I say, I used to stutter a lot, and it was difficult for me. When I was 20 years old, I had to have my brother. When in the old days, you make a phone call, and it was the old phone, remember? No. Okay, so you do that, and the operator, and we're talking Salinas, Gonzalez. You all know where Gonzalez is, that right? Okay, long distance. An operator would come on. You guys remember Laughing? Anybody remember Laughing? Yeah? There was an operator lady, and she would come out and say, "Hello, can I have your number, please?" They were real funny, right? So anyway, back in the 70s. So she would come on, and she was typical, with that thing in her ear, and just stuff. And you'd give out that phone number so they could bill you for that long distance call. So I had my brother come. The operator would say, "Can I have your number, please?" And I couldn't say 675 53. I had to kind of make my mind think. So I get my little brother over here. That was easier. "Hey, brother, come here. Tell the operator what my phone number is. 675-2253. I get on. Phone rings at the other end. My girlfriend's there, or her parents. Hopefully it wasn't her parents. So this is back in that back in a long time ago. So it was what it does to people psychologically. Not having control either way. I used to have to read books, and one thing that I think caused my problem was that the teacher would say, "Okay, Johnny, it's your turn to read. Your turn to read. Your turn to read." So everybody had to read a paragraph, right? You guys might have, back in my day, that's what we do. You stand up and you read that paragraph. I couldn't read. So I would try to read the picture. And back in those days, we had, Jane and Spot and Dick, Dick and Jane, right? The short skirt, the short shorts and the dress and all. Anyway, I used to try to make a story out of the picture that I saw. Because my dad would always try to get us to read comics. Because maybe we'd enjoy it, maybe we'd pick up the reading thing. But it was back in school, everybody would make fun at us because we were Spanish speaking, that it became, messed up for us to speak. So, and in those days, you could actually count in each classroom how many dark-haired students there were in the classroom. Now you go to Salinas, anywhere in Salinas Valley, you can't find any, well, there's a few blonde-headed people in there. Whether they're Mexican or not, I don't know. But they're blonde-headed folks, right? So when everything's changed. Now people are encouraged to be bilingual. You get hired because you're bilingual. You're skilled because you're, trilingual, whatever it is. If you can read and write, even better. But to get the word out that it's important to do that, how do you encourage somebody? You have to go to their need. Everybody, all of us instinctively work on our own self-interest. We always do that on our own. Whatever's important for me, I got to take care of, right? And some of us are more giving, and we help the other guy first because we know we can take care of ourselves later. So we wait, we take care of that person, okay? But instinctively, is take care of oneself. So that's I think what happened. If you guys put together a class, you put together. Is there an index? Is there a dictionary that provides those contacts for you? We could develop one. We could develop one out of this classroom. You guys decided serious? Look at all the languages that we need. Research it, find out. Yeah, get a 939, well, I was going to say zip code of all the, the zip code will tell you everybody within zip codes. You can go from San Jose to Santa Barbara. Everybody in there that can teach these other languages. Find out who they are, put them on that darn thing, then tell the world that this is where you can find these skilled people that will teach you. Because some people actually are going to go overseas somewhere because it's a job opportunity, but they don't have control of the language. They might need just a month, right? And there's people that go to Mexico to live in Mexico for 30 days to 6 months, just they can pick up the skill and the culture. So if there's a job available, and all you guys are, you're going to come out of here with degrees, and you're going to be looking for work anywhere, everywhere, right? And you're young, so I'm assuming you're going to want to travel. You might travel to a country you don't know their language or their culture. Where can you get that here locally? Think about it. It doesn't exist? Make it exist. That's what we did. When we were getting sprayed with pesticides out in the fields and stuff, and we had to create a law. So we created a law. And I did spend 4 years in Sacramento as a legislative consultant for Speaker Willie Brown. He was the Speaker of the House. So I spent 4 years working with him. I spent 10 years at the California Legal Assistance, working there, law office. I was a youth director for the County of Monterey, so I had to deal with a lot of Chicano type stuff in the early 70s. And then became a union organizer, and then now I'm working at a medical clinic, also trying to help folks who medically have issues. And we have a lot of language stuff that comes into us. The Triqui and other languages come in, people are and that's what we're doing with the Natividad Medical Center. They have a program now to directly deal with the challenges of language. So those folks are out there. They need your help to get the word that they exist out there.
If you guys have a club already organized, or you have something that is already established, you might be successful by reaching out to the different districts. You have Monterey Peninsula Unified is one of the largest districts in the area, and there's a lot of need. So I can provide the information to maybe your club organizers so you can get the word out that way.
Excellent.
And if I could just add to it before she offered you guys earlier a contact list of all your legislative and elected officials. You should grab one, contact them, have them work for you, finding out where those people are at, and because that's what they get paid to do, the public service. Here they're doing it for students for a career program. So they'll be more than willing to help you guys out. I think it'll work.
We pay their salaries, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. And they know because they have constituents they have to serve. So they often find themselves, if they could pick up a phone and call you directly, hey Joe, how do I get a hold of somebody who speaks Triqui? How do I get a hold of somebody who speaks Greek? Whatever, right? You guys are the source. You're the hub of this. And here you are, in what used to be the capital of Mexico. You guys can figure that out and say, hey, you know what? Right here, in the very heart of it, we put this together. And they were coming right here in California, Monterey. They were coming in from Japan, from the Philippines, from Russia, from Korea. They were coming in everywhere, coming across the Pacific this way, and they came from the Atlantic. They came over this way. So Mexico was the center of a lot of stuff, and this happened to be the capital at a short period of time. So think about it. I think it'll make headlines, and we might have some folks that help out with that.
Very good. So speaking of headlines, there was, last question for the evening is, there was a recent program on KSPW that talked about establishing a Monterey human trafficking task force, and the question is, how serious is the human trafficking problem in our community? I mentioned, in my early presentation, but
I can say when I worked in Sacramento, we actually put together a conference in San Diego that involved probably about 1,000 people, and they came in from all over the United States, and the primary discussion was human trafficking. It had to do with immigration, had to do with just what we're talking about here. And you had all the experts come in, the chiefs of police, commissioners, elected officials, all trying to deal with the issue of human trafficking and slavery. So we had that conference in San Diego. So there is that interest, but it seemed like, and I was part of one of the presenters there, but it seemed like everybody just went to listen. Nobody walked away with an actual plan. Oh man, I got this contact, got that contact, I'm gonna make this happen. That's why I went from the question to giving you guys something to do. Do something. Because education is important, but it doesn't work. Education does not work, your degree does not work if you do not utilize what you know. If you do not utilize what you know, what good is it? It's not any good for anybody. Get your education and apply it. Apply it. Otherwise, and don't be afraid to fail. Just keep moving, move forward.
the public interest in human trafficking or any other migration-related issues picks up only when there's a TV program or radio program focused on it. Or if there's a report in the newspaper at the front page talking about so-and-so being arrested. But the interest then wanes because nobody takes up any action following. You had a...
Could you just repeat, you said something about a task force and I missed it.
Yeah, apparently KSPW had a program in which it was stated that a local task force was being established. Does anybody know about this particular task force?
There was a speaker, a woman, and I wrote about it and I don't remember her name, I apologize, who came to talk about her experiences being survivor of sex trafficking and abuse, and she wrote a book. I will also send you that information. And I believe that the interest was born after that presentation. It was a couple of weeks ago. It was a movie made after the book that this person wrote. Before that, I had not heard there were concerns about human trafficking. There was one report I heard sometimes that there was some family hidden in a house being used as servants for a restaurant, but I never could get it confirmed. And we go back again to the issues of people who have no papers, they're very afraid, and there's really nothing you can do unless they come out of the shadows in those cases. So.
Yep.
So only because this is where it's gone, I was gonna say it at the end, but since the conversation's here, I did wanna let everybody know, if you didn't already know, tomorrow in the Irvine Auditorium, we're actually hosting the Amnesty International Club in collaboration with the Monterey Bay World Affairs Council, a screening of the film Not My Life, which is a human trafficking film, followed by an expert panel that work in human trafficking in the Bay Area. So we have District Attorney Nancy O'Malley, who is also the co-chair for the Human Trafficking Coalition. We have Lynette Parker, who's an advocate attorney who works with human trafficking victims, Jajma, who works directly with Survivor Services, and we also have Chris Stambaugh, who is the founder of the Grace Network, which is an anti-trafficking coalition project. So all of them will be there tomorrow, along with Rising International, which is also an incredible organization who will be having a table as well. So I welcome all of you, including the speakers, to come. It's tomorrow at 4:30 in the Irvine Auditorium. It will show the film first, followed by speakers where they're gonna answer some questions. In addition, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions of them afterwards. So they can talk directly to these questions about human trafficking in the Monterey Bay Area.
The Rape Crisis Center locally is involved in providing shelter and protection for victims of human trafficking. About 5 years ago, there was news about human trafficking just in Seaside, and on the street corner there was a van selling ice cream. And the sellers of ice creams were watching out for police while rape or prostitution was taking place in the house practically across the street from the van. So it does happen in our neighborhood, but only when that shows up in 6 o'clock news do people learn about it, and then the interest seems to wane. But there's also somebody who works with the San Jose Police Department who is an expert on human trafficking issues. He's well connected throughout California. He attends all these task forces. He also gives workshops. Some of our students actually participated in workshops and got certified as people who work with human trafficking cause. So those of you who are interested in that, there are local resources, facilities to go to, but come to the program tomorrow, by all means. Okay, since we're practically out of time, I'd like to bring this panel discussion to a close by thanking the 3 presenters for their excellent presentations. And I'm sorry we sort of ran out of time, so you didn't have time to talk more about your personal histories. But if you're willing to stay on another 10, 15 minutes, I'm sure some of the students have more questions to ask of you. So please join me in thanking the 3 speakers. Final word from the sponsors, co-sponsors of the program?
Well, we'd just like to thank everyone for coming, and please watch for our upcoming events. They're all listed on Facebook page and websites. And if you want recording or pictures, they'll also be there. Thank you.
Thank you.